The room is quiet now. The messages have stopped. No new accusation is arriving. No demand is waiting for an answer. And yet the argument continues inside your mind. You replay the conversation. You examine your tone. You question your memory. You wonder whether your judgment can still be trusted. The other person may be absent, but their version of you is still speaking. This is the private aftermath of manipulation. The pressure ends outside before it ends inside. And when you are longing for peace, meaning can become dangerous if you make it carry the wrong burden. You may say, perhaps I had to be treated this way to become stronger. Perhaps this was a sign to teach me. Perhaps the person who wounded me deserves credit for the wisdom I now possess. Listen carefully. Faith does not require you to call cruelty good. Meaning does not require you to rewrite mistreatment as a sacred necessity. Write these 3 statements into your thinking. First, it happened. You do not have to minimize it to prove that you are healing. Manipulative, controlling, or emotionally destructive conduct deserves to be taken seriously. You do not need to win an argument over a clinical label before you may recognize a harmful pattern. The question is not merely, what should this person be called? The question is, what did this conduct repeatedly do to my clarity, dignity, freedom, and peace? Second, what happened was not made good by what followed. If you became wiser, the wisdom is good. If you became more discerning, the discernment is good. If you learn to speak, choose, pray, rest, or stand again, that growth is good. But good fruit cultivated after injury does not transform the injury into kindness. Your recovery does not provide an alibi for the one who harmed you. Third, what happened does not possess final authority over who you are. It may enter your history, but it does not inherit your future. It may shape the conditions under which you recover, but it is not the purpose, author, or owner of your recovered life. Say this plainly. What happened to me is not what has authority over me. Say it again, slowly. What happened to me is not what has authority over me. That distinction is where healing begins. We are going to move in order, because confusion thrives where everything is mixed together. We will separate your responsibility from theirs and from matters you were never meant to solve. We will recover the identity buried beneath the roles you performed to keep the relationship stable. We will turn that restored identity into enforceable boundaries. We will rebuild trust through evidence rather than urgency. Then we will reclaim meaning as a present choice, not as praise for the past, and practice agency through disciplined self-government. You are permitted to tell the truth without hatred. You are permitted to keep faith without spiritualizing harm. You are permitted to heal without defending the person who injured you. But one seductive interpretation still remains. The belief that because something meaningful can emerge afterward, the wrongdoing must somehow have been necessary. That is the next lie we must remove. Suppose you sit down to write what this experience means. That page can become a place of freedom, or it can become another courtroom where you are pressured to defend what should never have happened. So before you write a noble explanation, make this distinction. Meaning making asks, what will I learn, protect, restore, or create now? Excusing asks, how can I rename harmful conduct as necessary, beneficial, or deserved? These are not the same work. One gives you authority over your response. The other gives the past a moral approval it did not earn. Write this down. Chosen meaning is present stewardship, not retroactive permission. Wisdom may come after a wound, but the wound does not become wise. Strength may emerge after betrayal, but betrayal does not earn praise. You may recover your voice after someone repeatedly silenced it, but their silencing was not a gift. You may become careful with trust after deception, but deception was not your teacher in the noble sense. The lesson belongs to the one who faced reality, accepted support, practiced discernment, and chose a different way forward, who receives credit for the growth. You do not because you controlled what happened, but because you are choosing what happens within your responsibility now. The courage you practice is yours. The truth you accept is yours. The life you rebuild is yours. Faith may sustain that rebuilding. Loving people may assist it, and wise counsel may guide it. But the person who caused the damage does not become the sponsor of your recovery. This is where some survivors accept a false bargain. They believe faith requires gratitude for another person's cruelty. They feel compelled to say, I must know why this was permitted. I must identify the sacred purpose. I must prove it was all necessary. No, faith can remain faith even when you refuse to invent an explanation. Hope does not depend upon calling evil useful. Moral clarity is not bitterness. There are questions you may never answer. You may never know the full motive behind the conduct. You may never receive an honest confession. You may never hear an explanation that accounts for the confusion, the loss, or the choices made against you. Human beings do not possess complete access to another person's inner world, and pretending certainty will not heal uncertainty. Sometimes maturity says, I do not know why they chose that, but I know what I will choose now. Record this sentence. I can redeem my response without redeeming their conduct. Say it again. I can redeem my response without redeeming their conduct. That is not denial. That is moral order. You can preserve hope without falsifying history. You can create purpose without granting the harm necessity. You can build something worthy without declaring the destruction worthy. Now the distinction is clear. Meaning belongs to your present choices. Misconduct remains with the one who chose it. But clarity must become more precise. Who is responsible for the conduct? Who is responsible for the consequences? Who is responsible for the next decision? That is where we must go next, because blame should be neither swallowed nor scattered. It must be returned to its proper owner. The argument has ended, but the hearing is still in session. Inside your mind, you are the accused, the prosecutor, the witness, and the unpaid investigator. You present evidence against yourself, imagine evidence hidden from you, and postpone peace until every mystery has been explained. That is exhausting because you are performing jobs that do not all belong to you. So take a page and divide it into 3 columns. Mine, theirs, and not mine to solve. Recovery requires neither total self-exoneration nor total self-blame. It requires accurate ownership. In the first column, write what is yours. Your present choices, truthful self-examination, any repair that is honestly available, the decision to seek help, and the enforcement of your boundaries. Perhaps you spoke from anger. Perhaps fear kept you silent longer than you wish it had. Perhaps you made a promise you did not keep. If something is yours, own it without drama and address it without delay. Accountability is useful when it produces truthful action. But listen carefully. Owning one poor response does not make you the author of an entire destructive pattern. You may regret how you reacted under pressure without accepting responsibility for creating the pressure. You may apologize for your words without apologizing for having limits. You may correct your conduct without rewriting someone else's conduct as your fault. Now look at the second column, theirs. Manipulation belongs to the person who manipulated. Intimidation belongs to the person who intimidated. Deceit, retaliation, and refusal to repair belong to the one who chose them. Do not dilute accountability by building a biography around every harmful act. Perhaps they were afraid. Perhaps they were wounded. Perhaps they did not know how. Those possibilities may explain something. They do not transfer ownership. A motive, even if known, is not a change of authorship. The third column is not mine to solve. Put diagnosis there when you cannot establish it. Put hidden intentions there. Put future remorse there. Put public recognition there. Put the perfect explanation, the sentence that would finally make everything settle there. You cannot verify every motive, control whether someone changes, or force other people to recognize what they did not witness. Stop accepting assignments for which you have neither authority nor evidence. Freedom is not having no responsibility. Freedom is carrying the responsibility that is actually yours and refusing the burdens that are not. Now participate. Name one false charge you have been carrying. Say aloud, I release responsibility for. Do not rush. Name it. Then name one duty that genuinely belongs to you. Today, I accept responsibility for. Perhaps it is asking for help, making available repair, telling the truth, or keeping a limit already stated. Release the false duty. Retain the real one. Your burden becomes smaller, clearer, and actionable. And when the courtroom finally empties, a more constructive question can be heard. Who are you when you are no longer organized around another person's demands? The space left by false responsibility can feel unfamiliar. For a long time, you may have known yourself mainly by what the relationship required you to do. You became the appeaser who lowered the temperature, the defender who explained every intention, the rescuer who prevented every consequence, the translator who made harmful conduct sound reasonable, or the proof provider who arrived with evidence for feelings that should not have required a trial. Those functions may describe how you survive pressure. They do not define who you are. Write this down. An assigned role is not a chosen identity. A behavior developed under strain may reveal adaptation, fear, courage, or exhaustion, but it is not your permanent name. You may have appeased without being weak. You may have defended yourself repeatedly without being argumentative by nature. You may have rescued because you cared, then discovered that care without limits was consuming you. What you did to keep the relationship stable is not the full account of who you are. Now make an identity inventory with 3 parts. First, remember the qualities that existed before this relationship organized so much of your attention. Perhaps you were curious, steady, playful, thoughtful, creative, prayerful, direct, or generous. Do not ask whether those qualities disappeared completely. Ask where they became difficult to express. Second, name the values you protected during the pressure. Maybe you continued to care about truth, fairness, mercy, loyalty, peace, responsibility, or dignity, even when those values were used against you. The fact that you struggled does not mean you possess no convictions. Sometimes the evidence of a value is that you kept reaching for it in an environment that punished it. Third, identify the capacities emerging now. Discernment, patience, honest speech, wise caution, the ability to ask for help, or the courage to disappoint someone without abandoning yourself. These are not decorations for a recovery story. They are capacities you are choosing to practice. But identity becomes believable through evidence. Self-trust does not return because you announce, "I trust myself now," and your entire nervous system applauds. It returns through small promises kept. End a conversation when you said you would. Record what happened accurately instead of editing it to protect someone else. Ask for counsel before confusion becomes isolation. Preserve the rest you already decided you need. Every kept promise tells you, "My judgment is allowed to guide my participation." And please stop preparing a courtroom-length defense for a simple no. Some of you have an opening statement, 3 exhibits, 2 character witnesses, and a closing argument when the complete sentence was, "I cannot do that." Identity does not require endless argument to become legitimate. Trustworthy community can help. Let wise people reflect your dignity, remind you of what pressure made difficult to see, and challenge you when correction is truly yours. But do not appoint a new authority to replace the old one. Healthy support strengthens your choices. It does not confiscate them. Say this aloud: "I am more than the role pressure assigned me. I will recognize my values, keep small promises, and choose my conduct with conviction." Now that you can begin to name the person being restored, the next question is practical. What kind of access protects that person? Identity must not only be recognized, it must be governed. You have named the person being restored. Now you must decide who receives access to that person, under what conditions, and for how long. This is where many survivors become afraid that protection is cruelty. But responsible access is not cruelty, it is stewardship. Write this down. A boundary is not the power to manage another adult. It is the authority to govern your own participation. A request says, "Please do not speak to me that way." A boundary says, "If this conversation becomes insulting, I will end it." The request asks for cooperation. The boundary establishes what you will do if cooperation is refused. One addresses their choice, the other governs yours. Use this formula. When this behavior occurs, I will take this action. Keep the behavior observable. Keep the action within your control. Not, "When you disrespect me, you will finally understand my worth." You cannot enforce understanding. Say, "When shouting begins, I will leave the room and reconsider the conversation later." That is clear. That is measurable. That is yours to perform. A boundary is also different from revenge. Revenge says, "You caused pain, so I will make you pay." A boundary says, "This conduct is harmful, so I will change my participation." One seeks repayment through suffering. The other protects dignity through action. Protection does not require punishment to become legitimate. Now test every boundary with 3 questions. Is it realistic? Is it proportionate? Is it within my control? If the answer is no, revise it. An unenforceable threat creates more confusion because it teaches both you and the other person that your words do not reliably guide your conduct. Do not announce a consequence you cannot or will not carry out. Calm limits are stronger than dramatic warnings. If calls become hostile, you may end the call. If questions invade matters you have chosen to keep private, you may decline to answer. If financial demands continue, you may stop providing money, require written details, or delay any decision until you have sought counsel. If someone arrives without notice, you may choose not to open the door. If a conversation becomes degrading, you may pause it and leave. Notice the pattern. You are not commanding another person's character. You are deciding what you will permit, provide, continue, or leave. And listen carefully. There is no universal level of contact suitable for every situation. Circumstances differ. Safety differs. Obligations, available support, and practical risk differ. Some limits can be stated directly. Others may need to be communicated through distance, documentation, or trusted assistance. You are not required to confront everyone, reconcile with everyone, or sever every relationship to prove that you are serious. Wise protection considers the actual conditions. Some people will call your consistency hostility because your former availability benefited them. Let them have their reaction. Their disappointment is not proof that your boundary is wrong. Repetition is not aggression. Enforcement is not revenge. A limit becomes credible when your conduct agrees with your words. Now complete one sentence. When occurs, I will. Make the trigger observable. Make the response possible. Make it proportionate. Then keep it. A boundary determines access. It does not establish trust. Once the door has a steward, the next question is more delicate. What evidence would justify opening it wider? You do not have to choose between opening your life immediately and closing it permanently. That is a false choice. Discernment offers a wiser path. Access may develop in stages. Hope can remain alive while trust waits for evidence. Write this down. Trust is not a gift demanded by urgency. It is access supported by consistent evidence. Before you widen access, let it pass through 4 gates. First, do words align with behavior? Promises matter, but conduct interprets promises. I have changed is a statement. Changed behavior is evidence. Second, does consistency survive time? Anybody can behave differently for one conversation, 1 week, or one desired outcome. A pattern becomes credible when it continues without constant supervision, applause, or reward. Time is not cruelty. Time reveals what urgency tries to conceal. Third, are limits respected? A trustworthy person may feel disappointed by your boundary, but does not need to punish you for having one. Watch what happens when you say no, delay an answer, keep something private, or request space. Respect under inconvenience tells you more than kindness when everything is agreeable. Fourth, when harm occurs, is there accountable repair? Repair does not merely say, I am sorry you felt hurt. It names the conduct, accepts its effect, makes available correction, and changes the pattern. Trust does not require perfection. It requires honesty when imperfection causes damage. These gates are cumulative. Persuasive words cannot replace time. Time cannot excuse violated limits. Respectful moments cannot substitute for repair. Do not open greater access because one gate looked impressive while the others remain locked. And separate 3 matters that are often confused: forgiveness language, reconciliation decisions, and restored access. They are not automatic synonyms. A person may release vengeance without resuming closeness. Reconciliation, where appropriate and safe, requires participation from more than one person. Access remains a practical decision about present conditions. You do not have to force all 3 onto one timetable to prove spiritual maturity. Now, discernment does not mean becoming a full-time investigator. You are not required to establish every warning sign beyond all doubt before acting prudently. Notice behavior. Record what you observe without exaggeration. Consult grounded support. Choose a proportionate response. Then review what followed. Did greater distance produce clarity? Did the person respect the pause? Did their conduct become steadier, or did pressure increase? This is self-trust in practice. Notice, name, consult, choose, review. Be especially careful when urgency arrives dressed as proof of sincerity. Decide now. Tell me everything. Come back today. Explain yourself again. Pressure is not evidence of trustworthiness. When someone demands speed, you may answer with time. A delayed decision is still a decision. A private matter may remain private. Hope does not owe urgency immediate access. Guarded hope is not permanent suspicion. It is openness guided by reality. It says, I remain willing to see what becomes true, but I will not purchase optimism with self-betrayal. Say it aloud. I can remain hopeful without rushing trust. I will widen access when consistent evidence supports it. Once trust is no longer rushed, purpose can also be examined without desperation. You no longer need a noble explanation for the harm. You are free to choose what your life will mean now. Now return to the question that followed you into the quiet. If you became stronger afterward, who gets the credit? Not the person who harmed you. They do not become the architect of every strength you later develop simply because their conduct came before your recovery. Sequence is not necessity. Something can grow after suffering without proving the suffering was required, deserved, or wisely administered. Rain may follow a difficult season that does not make every loss beneficial. You may harvest wisdom from the field without praising the storm that damaged it. Purpose is not hidden inside another person's mistreatment, waiting for you to call the mistreatment good. Purpose appears in what you freely choose to restore, protect, and contribute now. Consider 3 forms of chosen meaning. First, recover a neglected capacity. Return to something pressure forced into the background. Clear thinking, honest expression, creative work, peaceful rest, healthy connection, or confident decision-making. Recovery is not merely moving away from what injured you. It is returning to capacities that belong in your life. Second, protect a clarified value. Perhaps the experience made dignity, truth, safety, mutuality, or responsible freedom unmistakably important. Protect that value because you choose it, not because suffering had to teach it. Pain may have exposed what was being violated. Your conviction is what now gives the value a future. Third, serve others from freedom rather than compulsion. Your experience may eventually deepen compassion, sharpen discernment, or prepare you to offer wise support. But service is meaningful only when it is chosen. You are not required to turn recovery into immediate testimony, ministry, advocacy, or public disclosure. You do not owe an audience your private history. You may help quietly. You may wait. You may never make the wound the center of your contribution. Listen carefully. Healing does not require a permanent job description built around the worst relationship you survived. You are allowed to become known for more than what happened. You may create, lead, nurture, worship, learn, build, and contribute without repeatedly presenting your pain as identification. Privacy does not cancel purpose. And keep the lesson with the learner. If discernment grew, it grew through your attention. If courage developed, it developed through choices you practiced. If compassion matured, it was shaped by the way you refused to reproduce the harm. If new skill emerged, it came through labor, support, counsel, faith, correction, and repeated effort. Honor those who helped you. Honor the strength you exercised. Do not hand authorship back to the person whose control you are leaving. Write this sentence and complete it with your own next choice. What happened will not be called good. What I choose now can still become good. Read it aloud. Then name what you will recover, what you will protect, or how you may someday serve freely. Purpose has returned to your hands. Now it must become more than a declaration. Freedom must be carried into ordinary days through decisions that keep your authority active. The next question is no longer, what did they make me become? It is, how will I govern what has been restored? Begin with what is available today. Return to the 3-column ledger, but do not leave it on the page as an interesting exercise. Ask, what belongs to me before this day ends? Perhaps it is deciding whether to answer a message, recording an event truthfully, contacting support, protecting needed rest, making a practical or financial plan, or following through on a limit already stated. These actions may appear small, but self-government is built in the place where intention becomes conduct. Write this down. Agency is not a mood that arrives. It is authority exercised through the next responsible decision. You will not always feel strong before acting wisely. You may feel uncertain and still delay a pressured reply. You may feel afraid and still tell the truth. You may miss someone and still protect the distance that clarity requires. Feelings deserve attention, but they do not have to become your entire government. Use this daily rhythm. Notice, name, choose, review. First, notice what is happening, what was said, what changed, what is occurring in your body, your thinking, and your circumstances. Stay with what you can observe. Second, name what belongs to whom. What is mine to address? What belongs to the other person? What remains beyond my knowledge or authority? Accurate responsibility keeps compassion from becoming confusion. Third, choose the next responsible action, not the action that resolves the whole future. The next one, make the call, preserve the record, keep the appointment, delay the decision, end the exchange. Fourth, review without self-contempt. Ask what protected my values, what increased confusion, what needs adjustment tomorrow. Review is not permission to prosecute yourself again. It is how experience becomes guidance. Prepare before pressure arrives. Use an if-then plan. If I receive a demand for an immediate answer, then I will wait until I can think clearly. If confusion begins to isolate me, then I will contact trusted support. If an exchange becomes degrading, then I will leave it. A decision made in calm conditions can protect you when urgency tries to take command. And if you fail to keep a boundary once, do not announce that freedom has failed. A setback is not surrender, but neither should it be dismissed. Review what made enforcement difficult. Was the limit unclear? Was support unavailable? Did fear override preparation? Adjust the plan, repair what is yours, and enforce the boundary again. Grace permits course correction. It does not require repeated self-abandonment. Some situations exceed personal capacity. Seek suitable help when safety, legal concerns, finances, health, housing, or persistent coercion require knowledge and support beyond what you possess. Wise assistance does not promise a perfect outcome. It helps you make more informed choices within real conditions. Do not postpone movement until you receive closure, confession, or universal understanding. Those outcomes may come or they may not. Your next responsible act does not require their arrival. Now choose one duty within your control and perform it today. Then name one responsibility that belongs elsewhere and release it. Say aloud, I will do what is mine. I will release what is not mine. I will govern the next decision with truth, support, and courage. That is how freedom becomes durable. One accurate, bounded, repeated choice at a time. Return now to the quiet room. The messages have stopped. The argument is absent, but the silence has changed. It is no longer a chamber where you rehearse another person's accusations, revise your memories, or prepare one more defense. It is the place where your own judgment can be heard again. In that quiet, the question is not, will they finally agree with me? The question is, what is the next faithful decision available to me? Hold the distinctions together. What happened belongs to your history. It does not become your identity. Meaning can be chosen. Mistreatment does not need to be excused. Accountability accepts what is yours. Condemnation assigns you what is not. Boundaries govern your participation. They do not control another adult. Discernment studies evidence. Fear treats every possibility as certainty. Purpose grows through present choice. It does not wait for permission from the past. Now take one page and write 5 sentences. Write one boundary you will enforce. Write one identity statement grounded in the values you are restoring. Write one standard of evidence that must be met before trust receives greater access. Write one duty available to you now. Then write one false responsibility you are releasing. Keep the page simple. Recovery does not become more serious because the plan becomes complicated. Some of us can turn 5 sentences into a committee meeting with ourselves. No, clarity first, practice next. Then say this slowly. I will name the harm truthfully without allowing it to name me. I will accept responsibility for my conduct without carrying responsibility for another person's choices. I will own the growth I have practiced and honor the help that sustained me. I will govern access with wise boundaries and allow trust to follow evidence. I will not wait for agreement, confession, or permission before acting responsibly. My future is mine to steward. Do not make a grand promise about the rest of your life. Give this truth 7 days of conduct. For 7 days, practice the boundary you wrote. Keep one promise to yourself. Consult one trustworthy source of support. At the end of each day, review what happened without contempt. What became clearer? What protected your values? And what needs adjustment? At the end of the week, choose the next proportionate step. If faith is part of your life, you may bring this practice into prayer. You may sit in reflection. You may affirm hope before your feelings have caught up with your decision. But faith does not require renewed contact, immediate feelings of forgiveness, or gratitude for mistreatment. You may remain spiritually open while keeping the door wisely governed. The room is still quiet, but you are no longer waiting there as a defendant. You are listening as a person whose authority has returned. What happened remains part of your story, but it is not your name. It is not your purpose. It is not your final authority. Your future begins here, not when they understand, not when they approve, but when you choose the next truthful, responsible act without asking their permission.